left religion, Christianity, and fundamentalist churches, I noticed that churches love to teach its members to discourage thought, critical thinking by using what we call thought termination, cliches, or buzzwords. If you've ever expressed doubt, hesitation, or just human interest or curiosity, I'm sure you've heard certain buzzwords like, you just need to put your faith in God. God is in control. God never gives you more than you can handle. You just need to lean on God more. I mean, those are some very popular thought-terminating cliches. They're meant to give you assurance so you will stop doubting, wondering, or being curious. It's kind of like putting a temporary Band-Aid on a bigger picture. And in my opinion, based on things I know, I believe that thought-terminating cliches border on intentional or unintentional gaslighting. Now, you can disagree with me or have a difference of opinion. I mean, that's fine. But I have noticed that anytime someone experiences what we call a crisis, doubt, or they just don't understand how something works, or maybe they have curiosity. These thoughts are supposed to instill confidence or to turn off inquisitive inquiries. It's kind of like gaslighting. And the people who use them probably aren't intentionally gaslighting you. But there are people who do intentionally gaslight. It's extremely, extremely popular. So when human beings face what I call conflict or intellectual disconnect, why can't people just admit that they don't know the answer? Because if a religious person, a leader, an elder, a pastor, doesn't know the answer to something, it's better to use a term that instills confidence in someone than saying, I don't know. And this is why deconstruction is extremely difficult to navigate. Not for everybody. Not everybody's the same. Not everyone deconstructs entirely from a religion. Others deconstruct from a specific church, denomination, faction. Sometimes they might go to a completely different religion. And people like me, we completely disconnect and deconstruct entirely from man-made belief systems and mythologies. I don't think there's a right answer on how to deconstruct, or even deconstruction isn't right for everybody. The issue is when you use buzzwords like deconstruct, doubt, a crisis of faith, Christians usually use terms that don't allow for there to be doubt. And it can be very hard on somebody when their doubts are not taken seriously. And not only does it extinguish the possibility of having a positive conversational starter or an intellectual debate or disagreement, these words, these conversations can't or won't happen because people don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to be seen as having a crisis of faith. And it doesn't even have to be a major life-threatening, religion-leaving crisis. It can something as simple as not understanding the Trinity or how a man could resurrect himself. And when a religion or a denomination is so uncomfortable with doubt and people having questions, and they view it as a threat or something that needs to be extinguished, controlled, or villainized, you have what we call a cult. And not every cult makes people wear Nike tennis shoes and believes they're going to be beamed up like Heaven's Gate. Some cults, every denomination and religion uses cult-like tactics. We call it emotional priming, gaslighting, isolation, phishing, cliques. And if you can't have an intellectual discussion without a crisis where somebody is basically told that to doubt or to have an issue is seen as something they brought on themselves due to unbelief or not being a good enough member of a church or a believer, this can be detrimental to people's mental health. If people believe that they're having a crisis of doubt because they're not giving enough to the church, they're not there enough, they're not giving enough to God, this can be extremely unhealthy and borderline toxic dynamics. If anybody but God, a human male, told a woman, the reason why I don't reach out is because you don't reach out enough, you're not loyal enough to me, you're not giving enough to me, we would call this abusive, coercive, manipulative. If you have to lose your own identity to maintain a relationship, this is unhealthy. Probably criminal adjacent to keep someone so isolated they can't go to other people. And the people they can go to, if they shut down being inquisitive, people are going to deny their doubt. And we don't face doubt. It becomes a festering wound. And at some point, that curiosity isn't going to go away. It won't be able to be hidden, and it will erupt. It's going to cause what I call a schism of identity. People I've talked to in therapy, when we talk about RTS, religious trauma syndrome, many have stayed up to 25 years after their initial moments of doubt because they never felt safe enough exploring those doubts themselves or with a religious mentor. Now, this isn't every church, every denomination, that it doesn't happen this way. There are churches out there that encourage people to be inquisitive, curious, to debate, and to desire proof of something before belief is expected. But not from the fundamentalist Christian denominations I unfortunately had to deal with for 30 years. People lose their jobs, their social environments, their family, people in the community's favor and respect. If you have any kind of identity or doubt crisis, you are stigmatized. There is a stigma just as bad for mental health as there is for having doubt or deconstructing. And when people use thought-terminating cliches, it's to bypass the need to deal with the underlying issue by giving you permission to go on with life without facing a problem. American culture tends to be very trauma uninformed. They're so unaware of how doubt and curiosity works. They deny that it is healthy and normal to have doubt. The whole idea of toxic masculinity is the inability to admit you don't have as much self-confidence and body positivity as you really think you do. So you have to create an image of toxic masculinity. And this also is for toxic femininity. The whole idea of being perfect, having the perfect body, the perfect husband, the perfect life and car, it's all about the inability to realize that you have questions, that you don't have everything put together, and that life is a process. It's just one stop along the journey that you're going to experience. And when people use thought-terminating cliches, it shuts down conversations. It doesn't deal with the problem. It decenters a person's curiosity. It's basically a poison that keeps people from digging. Christians, ex-Christians, or just inquisitive religious people need to constantly think outside of how their denomination expects. They need to use critical thinking instead of the fundamentalist, white nationalist idea of mental gymnastics. And if you repress your doubt, that's not the only thing you're repressing. People repress their sexuality, their masculinity or femininity. They repress their orientation. They repress their whole miserable life, their marriage. It must be unbearable for some people, especially straight cis females who are married. They can't deal with things because their whole religion centers around one of the ideas. You have to have everything together. You have to act and appear like everything is perfect. And behind the scenes, you have to gaslight yourself in order to be happy. And you only have one life to live. Life is too short to gaslight yourself. And it's not a religious thing. It's a philosophical thing. People can't deal with their emotions, their feelings, their beliefs, because in order to do that, they would have to ask one question that most denominations of religion and Christianity refuse to ask. What if everything I believe is wrong? Because if people even accept that could be a possibility, they will lose everything. And the deeper you are in church and Christianity, it's almost impossible to leave, especially if you have children and grandparents and in-laws. There's no escaping. And when the leaders are so terrified of free-thinking people, of people who experience doubt and have the courage to speak it out loud, when the leaders see it as a threat, you can't be in a safe environment. Now, you may be physically safe, but religious, spiritual, and physically, and emotionally, intellectually, you may not be in a safe place. People can get extremely angry and defensive when they experience somebody who doesn't believe exactly the way they do. So, talking about things like, it's not that deep, lies of the devil, stop thinking too much. You clearly care too much about this topic. There are worse things in life to worry about. That one always makes me laugh, because instead of Christians focusing on genocide in Gaza and starving kids, or trans people dying in America, they focus on if somebody's married and having sex. It's all good. Here we go again. So what? What effect does that action have? Let's agree to disagree. It's what it is. Let people enjoy things. And it's hard to think outside the box when you've been told your entire life, or however long you've been in religion, that if you think outside the box, you are religiously doomed to be led away to hell. And Christianity keeps people from wanting to be honest about doubt and being unsure. Of course, it's not everywhere, but it is what it is. And anything that keeps you from pursuing knowledge and critiquing yourself and other people, I view it as a threat because it's minimizing my potential. And if I'm uncomfortable with my doubt, that's just a great place to start. It shouldn't be the place you hide or refuse to talk about it. And if people don't respect your doubt and try to gaslight you into making you feel like it's your fault you feel and think this way, then maybe you need to find a different group of people. Because people who care about you will want to make sure you're okay. They won't see your inquiry and your doubt as a threat. They'll see it as an opportunity. And that's something that in a lot of Baptist churches, the ones I was in, you just didn't ask certain questions. You never ask somebody why they're obsessed with something and why they never talk about something that's equally bad. Why is the church so obsessed with intimacy, marriage, virginity, and the family? Why are they not as obsessed about prayer and doubt and meeting the needs of single people over 30? Why aren't they focusing on other things? Why do they only focus on the same 7 things? And if you ask those questions, you just killed your spiritual career in any church. Because they don't want leaders that challenge the status quo. They don't want anything to rock the boat. Because it takes one person to start a problem. It takes one person to ask the right question in the wrong environment. And then everything gets awkward. And it shouldn't be awkward. But I have seen some people ask questions in church and get certain answers, and I have never seen them raise their hand ever again. And I never missed any Sunday morning Sunday school class. When you receive these kind of answers, you probably will not ask certain questions ever again, or for an extremely long period of time. Because the leaders make you very aware that you are nothing and you should be relying on the spiritual leaders for advice. Even though, looking back at some of the leaders' lives, I wouldn't have trusted them with my bank account, let alone my soul. A lot of those leaders would split churches apart to get jobs they're not qualified for, framing other leaders for normal behavior that they just can't deal with. And if you can't deal with hard topics and can't be okay with adult conversations, you have no business being your kids or anybody who is in a vulnerable state. Because some of the worst advice I have ever heard of for marriage counseling, doubt conversations, how to raise and rear kids, and how to navigate relationships. The worst, most misogynistic, racist information was in books I read in church. So never stop being curious. And if somebody doesn't like you asking questions, that's not a good environment for you.